Um, and then you can identify however you feel like. If you want to identify as your name an alcoholic, just identify and then do your share, big dog. It's all you.
Cool. Well, my name's Connor and I'm an alcoholic. Um, my sobriety date is January 7th, 2021. So I just have a few years of sobriety. Um, and I don't have, I got pretty lucky. I was pretty fortunate. I look back now and, my story's not the craziest and it's not the mellowest, but I definitely had some hardships, but I definitely could have made it a lot worse if I didn't get sober when I did. So, um, it's funny. I think the more sober I get, the more I look back on my early drinking years, which I used to classify as fun. And now that I look back on them, I used to think all these times that I'd go and hang out with friends, or even when I was young, I thought that it was fun. And I realized now when I look at just what I did and how I did it, it was just a nightmare. I was a nightmare for everybody and around everybody. I used to encourage everything from, well, your parents drink and they're kind of cool, so why don't we just steal the bottle? You know, why don't we just, they won't care as long as we pay them back. We're dumb high school kids and, um, I don't know, but I have pretty humble beginnings. I have two sets of great parents. My parents divorced when I was 3 because my mom is a was an alcoholic. She's active in recovery now and has been sober for a long time. So it's funny, I grew up in sobriety, knowing the outcomes, hearing the outcomes, and I still could make the excuse of, oh, I'm not an alcoholic. I could never be that. Um, it's funny, I talk to my mom now, and I always used to think that she said, hey, there's a 50-50 chance of you becoming an alcoholic because my dad's not. And I talked to her and she's like, no, I don't think I ever said that. So it's something I rode with in my life for a long time where it's like, I'm not that 50%. And statistically speaking, it's in the medical field, it's a lot higher than 50%. Just because you have like one primary caregiver that is an alcoholic and the other is not, that doesn't mean it's a 50-50 chance. I think I totally just made that up and rode with it until I was in my late 20s. So, but I grew up in, I'm from, born and raised, still live in Utah. So I grew up in the prominent religion here and I was super active until, 14, 15, when I started to explore and realized that really wasn't how I wanted to believe. And I had some turmoil through a friend killing himself in high school that really showed me um, just how human religion can be. And he was just one of the most phenomenal human beings. You know, we all make our own decisions. Um, just the way that they kind of disrespected him when he was being memorialized just blew me away. And it definitely pushed me so far away from what I thought I loved as a God growing up. And then out of spite, I started going to a different church and got baptized by a woman and threw my whole family for a loop. And through my young adult years, I would party here and there, but it was never too crazy. Tried to stay away from drugs. And then my senior year is really when, I'm an adult. We had a couple of buddies had older sisters that would always buy us booze. And then we started throwing these parties as like, I played baseball. So we always had these baseball parties under the guise of like, oh, it's just pretty innocent. We're not drinking that much. And, looking back, we made some pretty bad decisions bordering on like lots of alcohol poisoning, lots of young kids doing dumb stuff. But it was never me that got sick. It was never me that wanted to quit. I always was like, hey, well, there's more left in the bottle. Might as well finish it. Not And I thought that was being cool. I thought that was holding like an iron cross on your sleeve saying, look what I can do. And that got me into a lot of trouble. Eventually all our partying got caught up to us, and like 2 weeks left of our senior year season, 12 of us got kicked off the team with 2 weeks left. Um, we needed two more games to go to state, and we'd gone to state the last 3 years. And it ruined a lot of our careers. Our coach went ahead and called any of the recruiters that we had talked to, or any of the coaches we had talked to. A lot of us had preliminary contracts with colleges to go play, and our coach definitely showed us the repercussions of breaking the rules. And out of the 12 of us, I think four of us ended up going and playing. Um, and mine wasn't until after I went, I kind of ran away from home. My mom and my stepdad, who I'd never lived with my whole life, said, "Hey, do you want to go to Japan?" And I said, "Sure, I don't have anything going on." I'd kind of built my life around, "Hey, I'm going to go play baseball after I graduate. And that's all I want to do." And suddenly I was left with this decision of like, what am I going to do? And so, um, that was some of the repercussions early on. And I'm over in Japan in my early, I'm 18, 19 years old, and run into a bunch of kids my own age and run into a baseball team, and I end up playing baseball out there. This is back then. I still kind of had a faith in a higher power, a faith in God, and I figured, oh, well, I guess God wants me to keep playing baseball, and that's how we'll do it. And it was great. I remember Japan as being a fantastic experience, and mostly because they have a lot of laws and regulations on drinking and stuff. And I definitely could get away with drinking because they don't, you're in a foreign country, you look old enough, they're just going to assume you're old enough. But I didn't really drink. I didn't party. I really devoted myself to getting better at baseball and like coming back and playing college ball. And that's what I did. And I came back home a year and a half later, and um, ended up playing a little bit of baseball and running into some old kids that I played with in high school. And it was funny that the second I got there, it turned into a giant party. You know, um, I mean, within the first couple of weeks, we were already in trouble. Coaches already talking to us, so we need to tone it down. Um, and I went one semester there, and then came back home and wanted to try out for a couple colleges around here. And so right as I'm gearing up to try out, I break my arm, and then I ended up getting Tommy John's shortly after, and that was the end of my baseball career. So, I'm 20. I just turned 20. And I did not know what to do with my life. So I jumped on the first thing I got hired on as, and I worked for Powder Mountain, and found myself right at home with anybody that wanted to party and anyone that wanted to do drugs. And, you know, from there on, my early 20s were just running and gunning, you know, selling drugs, stealing drugs, doing whatever I wanted to do. Um, and it seemed like any time that there was going to be a repercussion, it just definitely missed me. I had so many close calls with DUIs and so many close calls with getting caught with way too much on my plate, things that, a lot of people I've ran into ended up going to prison for. And I, at this time, I had lost faith in God. I didn't believe in him anymore, and I didn't think that he had a good place in my life. So the second that I let that go, all my good decisions I was trying to make, they just went straight out the window. And all this meantime, I didn't really think I drank that heavy because, all my friends are drinking heavy. We just party and party and party. And, a couple people die, friend accidentally shoots himself, happened to be our major like drug dealer. And we all thought we were going to go to prison because they had his phone, and we're doing a full investigation of like what had happened. We're all sitting there, sitting on product being like, well, when are they going to come knock on the door? And That's kind of when I rained out of my drug use. I had it never really did what I wanted it to do. The only thing that ever got close was painkillers and Klonopin. I do a little half and half, and it felt like I was drunk. I didn't realize that till I was in sobriety. Like that's what I was chasing with that. And the second the pills were gone, I wasn't like, this is my thing. I need to go get this. It was more like, well, I think I can do this with alcohol, and I think I can do it a lot longer and a lot cheaper. And that just became my drug of choice. All my friends would try and clean up and get sober for a life event. And I was just like, why are we stopping the party? Why has this got to stop here? You know, and all these times that I recount now that I thought were just the best times of my life were I was a nightmare to everyone and everything around me. Going to concerts, I was that dude that wanted to fight everybody. I was really nice until I got drunk enough, and then I was like, "You got a problem with me? Of course you do." And then I was also that friend that drove everyone home, no matter, you know, no matter how bad it was. Up until my first DUI, we had been partying all day, all night long. Got home at like 2, and I had this phenomenal idea after I'd driven over the divide from over in Huntsville and Liberty area back into North Ogden. I was just like, you know what, I'm hungry. Let's go get tacos. I'm chilling, and make it about 3 blocks down the road, and North Ogden PD light me up. And my friends are like, you're sober, right? You're good. And I was like, no, I'm so far from it. I've been drinking all day. And this is when I had started pregame before my friends. This is when I had started to drink by myself to get ready for the party because the party just was never enough. The bar was never enough. I stopped going to the bars because it was too expensive or they'd cut me off. There's only so many double doubles you can do before, the bartender looks at you and says, yeah, I think I don't want to send you home like this, even though you act normal. And I'll take your money. I got kicked out of some of the shittiest bars in Ogden because they wouldn't serve me anymore and I lost my mind. Like, come on, man. I've been here for an hour. What do you mean I can't drink anymore? And but rolling into my DUI, I ended up blowing a .245. And I don't know what it was on the street. That was my actual, like, the ticketed one they give you. Um, and even then, I didn't realize how much God was doing for me because it's the craziest DUI story that, I don't think very many people have experienced because all my other friends, they went to jail. They served a couple days in jail because it's usually on a weekend and they don't let you out until you can post bail. And I got a written citation and the cops drove me back up to my friend's house and dropped me off. And I did not get booked in jail, didn't get a mug shot. I did get formally charged and I pushed that out as far as I could. I remember I was so terrified that I was going to go to jail because I fell into the higher bracket for DUIs in Utah now. So I was mandatory looking at 160 days. And I really didn't want to go to jail, and I made every excuse in the book. I ended up pleading with the prosecutor and ended up doing, I think, 2 days of ankle monitoring. I had an 8-month probation though. And then I had to do all the, normal stuff, the drug and alcohol classes, that kind of stuff. Um, and funny enough, when I went to go to my guilty plea, I really thought the judge, because the judge up in North Ogden is known for, he doesn't care who you are or what you did, he'll put you in jail. It's his pretty common circumstance. And the prosecutor even was like, "Yeah, man, I think you got to gear up. I think you're probably going to do at least a week. I don't think I can stay 160 days in jail like you. That's just how it is nowadays." And um, you know, it was, just a nightmare. And I get up to the judge, and of course, I'd been drinking. You can't not drink before you're going to go to jail, right? So I could barely stand, and the judge looks at me, and I think for the first time in my life, someone genuinely told me, he says, I think you have a problem, and I think you should try and get some recourse. And he's like, I don't think jail's going to help that. And, I hope you don't get another DUI because people like you get more than one. Um, and then that was my free pass. I didn't have to do UAs for my probation as long as I showed up not intoxicated, which became incredibly hard. The longer I was in probation, the harder it was to not show up intoxicated. And then, I wasn't driving. My my ease of access was, you know what, I don't need a car. I'll just walk everywhere. And I'm living up in Eden at this time. And my probation officer was in Ogden. So it became incredibly hard to get to my, probationary meetings. And my last month, I missed my probationary meeting. And so I meet my probation officer at North Ogden Courthouse yet again. And I'm begging her to say, hey, I don't want to go to jail. I don't, because, probation is that, you fuck it up, you go straight to jail. You serve that whole 160. And I begged with her and pleaded, and she said she's going to send me to jail up until she got up in front of the judge and said, he's done his thing, he's been here, it looks like he's trying to make progress. And then she, said that he's good, and I got cut off probation. Then then I really got the free reins, you know, but skip forward a couple more years, I didn't care. DOI didn't stop me, it didn't slow me down. I think it just aggravated everything. And, the next couple years were just me losing friends left and right. All these people that I had for years of my life now were telling me like, hey, I think we need to sell this up because we don't like you around here anymore. Because I had turned into just, you know, a disastrous drunk after that point. I was drunk sun up to sundown. If you had it, I drink it. The very typical story. It was just like any other alcoholic. You do whatever you got to do. And I moved in with a bartender, and he had an open bar at our house. And my first point of contention with my roommate, which I'd known for about 5 years, was I drank every single ounce of liquor in every bottle, and he had 25 bottles. And I'd done it a couple times and paid for it and placed it. And he finally caught me. And I came home, and there's, all these bottles on the ground. And of course, the alcoholic in me is immediately into, lie, lie, lie. I didn't do that. I didn't fill them with water. It must have been one of the other people here. And he's like, your girlfriend lives here and you live here, and your girlfriend doesn't drink. And I was like, well, yeah, I guess it was me. And so, at the end of that, I don't know. It was wild. And this is, I had missed COVID because we all kind of blanked that year out. And I received federal money to just drink every day, and I had met my now wife at the time and had started, I'd never had to hide my drinking until I met my then girlfriend. Um, and she was the first long-term relationship I'd had for 10 years because I burned everybody's bridge. 6 months would hit, and I'm just sick of you telling me what to do. I'm sick of this. I don't want to make any form of change in my life to make our lives better. So, why don't you hit the high road and I'll stay where I'm at. So this is the first girl that decided she wanted to hang around with me, and she took on a giant project. I'll tell you what, um, she very, very quickly came to realize that I had a really bad problem. About 6 months into us dating, she realized that I had an uncontrollable desire to drink. No matter if we were out with friends, if we were at my parents' house, if we were anywhere, I had my own bottle. I had my own beers, and that's where it was. And then it hit to the point where I could not afford to just drink as much as I was anymore. So now I'm drinking what I can when I can. And I'm driving again. And now I'm working for the government. Granted, I'm just mowing lawns, but I get to drive a government truck now. So, government DUIs are no joke. And luckily enough, I don't know how, I was, there's, there's at one point, part of me just believed that I was just going to have to stay completely drunk for the rest of my life, you know. And this is when the creeping fear is finally caught up to me of this is how I have to live forever because nothing else in this world makes me happy. There's no part of me that ever feels or wants or has any form of desire to do anything but be drunk. And when I hit that desperation, you know, that I think that was the first time in my life that I didn't joke about being an alcoholic. That was the first time in my life that I wholeheartedly admitted that I was like, oh my God, I am an alcoholic and I cannot stop. You know, this is, by then, I'm shaking. I'm puking up blood every day. I'm chasing the puke with another shot of vodka because that's the only thing that makes me stop shaking. And it's the only thing that makes me stop puking. Um, and a full year before that, I had totally lost count of, when I had stopped, like when was the last day that you stopped drinking? When was the last day I was sober for more than 12 hours? And I always used to blame a hangover on DTs or DTs on a hangover. I had started having DTs for probably 4 years by then, and I just could not stop shaking. And I was like, you know what? I'm just sick. I just, I'm just hungover. I need to drink some water. I need to eat some food. I'm just sick. And so, fast forward another about year into my relationship, and my then girlfriend is just so over my shit. She's so over all the lies, she keeps pulling bottles out of my car, she keeps finding all this stuff, me saying, you know what, I'm not drinking anymore. And at one point, I think I had chained like 3 days together in the premise of like I'm sober for a month. And like I genuinely made everyone around me believe that I was sober for a month, which just meant I only could drink White Claws out in the shed rather than drink liquor or wine. Because I was a big wine guy. I'd go buy that $4 bottle of wine, get absolutely fucked. And then, you know, and then to tone it down, I was like, you know what I can do? I can drink White Claws. It smells like nothing. It smells like a soda, or it smells like sparkling water. And I got away with that for a long time until, my mother-in-law at one time pulls out like 3 or 4 boxes that I had forgotten. You start forgetting about all this stuff because you drink so much. And that's when my wife really like started giving me the ultimatum. Oh, and then fast forward, she kicks me out of the house. I make the attempt to go drive to an old friend's house. And that's when I make the stunning realization that, I'm probably gonna die. Um, and I'm gonna die in the shittiest place I could ever imagine, in this guy's house that I absolutely hate, that I thought was my friend. And sometime in there, my mom calls me because for like about 3 days, I had not talked to anybody, not my wife or my girlfriend at the time, not my family. I declined everybody's phone calls or just let it go to voicemail. And my mom finally gets through to me, and I'm pretty almost blackout drunk, and she says, hey, I just wanted to talk to you one last time before I'm not able to anymore. In all reality, I think my mom thought I was going to die. And that hit really hard. And she said, I'm never going to make you do anything you don't want to do. And she never ever pressured me in my whole adult life to get sober. And she finally said, but I think if you don't make a decision, you might end up somewhere you don't want to be. And that was the first time I think I ever asked God again to help me with sobriety. And the next day, um, I called a guy and he said, "Hey, why don't you come to a meeting?" And it was the scariest moment of my life. And I had started to detox and I was white as a sheet, sweating bullets. I'm sure I smelled just the worst. I probably smelled like all the well liquor combined. And went to my first meeting. And from there on, it was wild because for the first time in my life, I actually wanted to get sober for myself. You know, that night I asked God what I needed to do and got no reply back. And then I figured the only thing that I could do was call this guy that might or might not help me. And I ended up finding a community of people that had a whole bunch of sobriety. And that first meeting, people were happy and content, and the hole inside of themselves had been filled, and then I made the slow trudge back into society, which sucks, coming to terms with all the terrible things you've done. I didn't believe in God, and it took me months. I was told by this man who had now become my sponsor to sit in a quiet room and talk to the dark, talk to whatever was there, whatever wasn't there. And one day it just happened, this God that I had been saying didn't exist finally kind of showed up in my life. It wasn't a burning bush, but I think I started to realize all these things that God had done for me in my life, especially now that I'm trying to get sober, all these crazy things that, I didn't think I could handle sober, I could handle, you know, it was saying, that God will start doing things for you that you can never imagine. And that's exactly what happened. And I put my faith in him, and the rest is history. As long as I have a strong connection with my God, I can. I don't know if I can do anything, but I know that He's got my back. I can walk through life unafraid, and you know, after finding God, I was able to actually do. I'm from a 12-step program. I was able to do my 12 steps, and a big part of that was doing personal inventory. And for the first time in my life, I was honest about myself. And that was a huge turning point for me because once I got honest with myself, I think I could start becoming the person everyone around me wanted me to become and who I wanted to become at that point. And after that, I did my 12 steps, and they always say, hey, you'll find a sponsee when you finally have something that they're looking for. And I went almost 2 years before I had my first sponsee, and he just got his 1 year a couple months ago. And that showed me the true premise of my program, is after you get to do all these things with yourself, you get to share the message with someone else. And that's when you truly get to realize what my program does for you. And for me, it shows me that it's possible to be a good human being and to have, honest and fruitful connections, and to, you know, by no means am I a millionaire, but I can pay my bills and I have a decent car that gets me to A to B. And I now have a beautiful wife and 3 dogs. And I have things in my life that I thought were so far away. I thought were never going to be attainable. That young kid in me that always dreamed of having a family, of having a life that my father is proud of, because that was a big thing for me. I always want to make my dad proud. And once I figured I couldn't do it anymore, it's just like, well, I might as well make my best attempt to not make him proud. That's come back, and um, after my first year, I got my 1 year chip, and that's the first time I think I ever heard my dad in the last 10 years say he's proud of me. And he doesn't understand. He's such a normal human being. He doesn't ever have any problems. He's one of those people that say, you know what, I'm 20 pounds overweight. I'm just gonna not eat. He's one of those crazy people. And everything for me is like, I have a I have to make a wholehearted effort to do anything like that. You know, I'm trying to lose weight right now, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done. You know, it makes getting sober look easy. You know, I've been sober for a little while now, so if I do my program, it makes life really easy, except for losing weight. That shit's hard, man. But you know what? My program has provided a life for me that I never could have imagined. It's provided a resource for me to always go to. You know, people that I can always look to for an example or for um, a direction. I've made friends in my program that I'll do anything for them. I used to say that about people I grew up with or friends that I had for a long time. And, I wouldn't actually do that. I would only do it if it fit a need for me. But nowadays, my service work is if someone asks me to do something inside my program or even outside of, you know, that I do it anyway because the selfish part of me feels really good, you know, and I don't do it for the accolade. I don't do it for the attaboy. I do it because when I do something for somebody else, it just makes me feel good. It reminds me that I don't need to drink, that I don't need to use drugs, that I don't need to go out and confuse my mind as to, what my reality actually is. I can be present and don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect in sobriety. I still struggle. You get sober and you reach out for anything that makes you feel good. At first it was cigarettes, and then I figured if I'm gonna get sober, I might as well stop smoking cigarettes because my luck, I'll get leukemia in like the first year and it'll be all for nil. And after that is Canadian. Man, I think I put on 60 pounds after I got sober, and it was wild. And then, you know, and it's anything. You got to be careful because just because it's not a drug or it's not alcohol, it can become a vice. Um, my latest thing was, I had to become honest with my wife about, pornography. I never thought that I had a problem until, my wife was like, I hate that. I hate that you're doing that. That's really disrespectful to me, to our family. And I justified it, just like I justified my drinking, all those actions behind it. And so now I have to make a huge amends inside of my marriage because of the things that I did in sobriety. So you got to be careful because if you're not running a good program, you start making excuses. And those vices, like thank God I didn't go out and drink. And the only thing that took me getting honest with my wife was the fact that I figured if I kept doing this, I might as well just go drink because I'm sitting there lying inside of sobriety. And that scared me. That scared me more than anything because I value my sobriety with, all I got now. And for me to make that conscious like conclusion with God, and he's sitting there telling you, hey man, you better get honest. All this that you've worked for is just you might as well throw it away. And that scared me really bad, you know. And it's funny because I've started to make repairs on that, and suddenly now that I've gotten actually honest with everything and everyone around me, my life is even better. It's, I still have my struggles. I still have debt. I still have things that challenge me every day. And there's still things that I go, I really don't want to do that. And then God will say, hey, you should probably do that. You know, even sharing my story can be scary. I don't, that inner alcoholic in me screams at me sometimes and says, hey, people don't want to hear what you got. And that's not what I've been taught. People want to hear. I loved it when I first got sober, and I still love hearing people's stories because it reminds me of where I was and how bad it was. And then it reminds me what you can become, and that middle part where you're trudging, it may feel like hell, but I promise you, when you get done, man, it feels so good. You get done with your steps or, whatever you do inside your program to make you become honest and forthright. You get done with that, and for the first time in your life, you have something to hold on to. That's how it was for me. I had something that I could finally hold on to and say, this is mine and it's honest. I haven't lied about it and I feel good about it. It didn't make me a good person by any means, but it made me feel good about where I could become or like where I could go and what I could become. But you know, if I hope someone can, hear my story and get a little bit out of it. It's not the best and brightest, but I try really hard. And God tries really hard. If you give it the chance and you give it a little bit of dedication and you realize that you really want it, hold on to that. Hold on to that really, really hard because those first months are fucking so hard. So hard. But if you have that little bit, you have so much more than a lot of people have. And that's all you need. It's like you just got to open the door. If you open the door to sobriety and let it in, man, dude, life is way better. And it's like I still do normal stuff. I go to concerts, I go do what I want. By no means do I go sit in a bar. That's not really my scene anymore. I don't find enjoyment or anything like that. Um, but I do get to go out and do normal people things. I go out and I'm in public and I go see shows I want to see. And, you know, obviously you don't go sit around a bunch of people that are doing things you don't want to do because, I'm not that strong. God's that strong in my life sometimes, but I know I'm not that strong. So I'd be careful with the situations I put myself in, but by no means am I fearful. But I still have like my 10-foot stick I poke, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna go over there. But I don't know. If you give it the chance, you'll be good. But that's all I got.